You don't get crowned the Cremation King of California unless you've earned it. In Pasadena, one mortician built a business burning bodies like firewood, sometimes 19 at a time, pocketing cash, pulling gold teeth, and selling parts on the black market. His name, David Sconce. And thanks to HBO's documentary, The Mortician, his horrifying hustle is finally back in the spotlight. So how far did this guy go to make a killing? Literally? I'm Chris. Thanks for joining us today. Let's recap. It's the smell that hits first. Sickly sweet and unmistakable. Out in the California desert, thick black smoke is pouring from a squat, windowless building. So a guy calls the fire chief and says, "They're burning bodies in there." The chief brushes it off. "It's just a ceramics factory," he says. But then the caller hits him with this: "Don't tell me they're not burning bodies. I was at the ovens at Auschwitz." That stops him cold. So the chief drives out to the place, still thinking it's probably nothing, but when he opens one of the brick ovens, a human foot falls out. It's January 1987, and that horrifying discovery blows the lid off one of the wildest, most disturbing funeral home scandals California has ever seen. At the center of it all is a man named David Sconce. So, who is this guy? He wasn't supposed to be the one running the family business. He was a jock. Football, track, big dreams. But after a blown-out knee ended his college career, David got pulled into the family trade, running Lamb Funeral Home in Pasadena, California. But David didn't just take over, he took it overboard. His company, Coastal Cremations Incorporated, mostly worked behind the scenes as a wholesaler for other funeral homes. And David slashed prices, charging half of what everyone else was asking. Plus, he threw in pickup and delivery for free. Business was booming. In just 1 year, cremation numbers skyrocketed. By 1986, he was pushing close to 25,000 cremations, up from just 200 a year. And if anyone in the industry tried to push back or ask questions, he was known for sending goons to scare off competitors and silence whistleblowers. This wasn't just a shady operation, it was a full-blown cremation cartel. His vans, wagons, and trucks were everywhere, crisscrossing Southern California like a morbid delivery service. It was Amazon Prime for the dead. So, how was he doing it? He was cramming up to 19 bodies at a time into the ovens. No respect, no dignity, just people stacked like firewood. Employees were told to cut them up if they had to, just to get them in. And those ashes families got, they weren't just grandma, they were a random mix. Sometimes dozens of people, all scooped together and sorted by weight. 3 to 5 pounds for a woman, up to 7 for a man. But it gets worse. David Sconce wasn't just stuffing bodies into ovens, he was harvesting them. He was yanking out titanium hips, prosthetic limbs, organs, you name it. Court records say they sold 136 brains, 145 hearts, and 100 lungs. And that was just in 3 months. And wait until you hear about the teeth. David bragged he could make up to $6,000 a month pulling gold teeth and selling them to local jewelers. He had a nickname for it. He called it making the pliers sing. He was literally making a fortune off the dead, and he didn't care, not even a little. One former employee said David used to test his strength by tossing bodies in cardboard boxes around the mortuary like hand weights. Another guy said David once eyeballed him, laughed, and called him a one-hander, meaning he'd only need one hand to toss his body into the furnace. And those ovens, they were working non-stop. Until they finally gave out. All that human fat built up over time and ignited. The whole place went up in flames. But David didn't stop. He just moved operations to that creepy desert warehouse. That's where everything finally came crashing down. It ended a lot differently than it started. Back in 1929, Charles Lamb opened the Lamb Funeral Home in Pasadena. It was the kind of place you'd see in an old-timey magazine ad, and they were. The Lambs once posed next to their trusty Maytag washer with Dad's football uniforms flapping on the line behind them. Charles passed the torch to his son Lawrence, who later turned it over to his daughter Lorianne and her husband. They took over just as cremation was catching on. And that's when her son, David Sconce, stepped in. He set out to become California's Cremation King. On the way, he became the face of everything wrong with the funeral industry. In 1989, he finally pleaded guilty to a list of stomach-turning charges: mutilating corpses, stacking bodies for mass cremations to boost profits, stealing from the dead, and even hiring goons to rough up his competition. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison with the chance of parole. After that, lifetime probation. Not exactly the legacy his great-grandfather had in mind. After prison, David packed up and moved to Arizona, trying to lay low and start over. But surprise, surprise, he couldn't stay out of trouble. In the mid-90s, he got busted in a bizarre bus coupon scam while working as a bus driver. Then came the kicker. In Montana, he was caught with a stolen rifle, his neighbor's rifle. Not only was it theft, it was a direct violation of his lifetime probation. So in 2013, the hammer came down. David Sconce was sentenced to 25 years to life, but in 2023, he got early release. And now, he's back in the spotlight as the focus of the HBO documentary, The Mortician. But just when you think the story's over, the real bombshell drops. At the end of the documentary, David drops a cryptic hint. Suddenly, the story isn't just about cremation scams and stolen teeth. There's talk of murder. 3 of them. One of the names that keeps coming up when you dig into the rumors is Tim Waters. He wasn't just any mortician. Tim was a 300-pound force out of Burbank, known for being brutally honest and not exactly popular with the competition. He took business wherever he could, and he didn't shy away from calling people out. One funeral director said Tim was flat out telling folks David Sconce was cramming multiple bodies into the ovens, and that made him a problem. In February of 1985, Tim was jumped by a hired thug who later said David sent him and told him to make it look like a robbery. Then, just months later, Tim died. Out of nowhere. At first, everyone thought it was a heart attack, but years later, when David was allegedly overheard bragging about poisoning him, the case got a second look. A witness came forward saying David told him he'd slipped something into Tim's drink at a restaurant. David denied it, said he never even met the guy. But when the coroner re-examined Tim's old tissue samples, they changed the cause of death to poisoning by oleander, a deadly plant that grows just about everywhere in California. David became a murder suspect, but the charges didn't stick. Another round of testing couldn't prove oleander was the cause. Still, the suspicion never really went away. And Tim Waters wasn't the only one. There are 2 other deaths that raised serious questions, both mentioned in the HBO documentary. One involves Ron Jordan, a former employee. According to the doc, Ron had seen way too much, and he wanted out. He told David he was quitting, but promised to keep quiet about everything he'd witnessed. Not long after that, Ron was found hanged. Authorities ruled it a suicide, but in the doc, David admits some people think he had something to do with it. His response? Why would I want to kill him? Seriously. Then there's the strange story David shares toward the end of the documentary about a man who once robbed him at gunpoint in front of his now ex-wife. David leans in and asks the filmmaker, "You think I found that guy later?" Then he adds, "It's one of those things I can't talk about. The other thing I'll tell you too, but you can't talk about that either." Then comes the line that leaves everything hanging. Really, there's 3 of them all together. Okay, promise not to tell on me. The filmmaker quickly tells him he doesn't want any info he can't use on air. David just laughs and says, it's never going to come back. Can't come back. But now, with the Mortician pulling the curtain back on this entire twisted saga, a lot of people are wondering if it might. One good thing did come out of this mess. After the smoke cleared, literally, California tightened up the rules. Now, crematories can be hit with surprise inspections, and ripping gold or silver out of someone's mouth? Yeah, that's a felony. But what do you think about David's comment in The Mortician? Was it all just talk, or is he hiding even more than we know? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for all the crime in half the time. I'm Chris. Amy and I are here 3 times a week with more recaps. Until next time, take care.